Most people never get out of the weeds, and they keep doing the same actions over and over again because it feels good. But more than 10x'd my investment because I've connected with people who have money, and guess what? They have problems, and guess what else? I can solve some of them.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. What is going on, my friends? I hope you are having a happy holiday season. Who you just heard was the one and only Alex Foulkes of CoLabs HQ. Today, he's going to teach you and I how we can scale by getting out of the weeds. A lot of business owners, a lot of founders always feel like they're stuck in a trap. What Alex does at CoLabs is he helps people get out of the weeds and focus on building structure and scalable systems. In this chat, we're going to touch a little bit on Alex's past. You're going to learn about his story. The dude has no shortage of quirks and things that differentiate him. He's got a twin. He's long, lanky. He's got a long career in the restaurant industry. But he's also super transparent. A lot of times, high performers, other people who've accomplished really awesome things in their life, they kind of have an air of superiority to them. And Alex is totally the opposite. You know, getting to know him the past year and a half or so on LinkedIn, I can't believe it's been that long. But the dude is exactly the same in person as he comes across online. And as you guys will notice, that's increasingly rare these days. So I'm super stoked to share with you guys Alex's story from the restaurant industry, all the lessons he's learned from building that business, starting, being scrappy, and also some of the things that he's transparent about, the times when he's nervous, the times when he struggles as a founder too, and how he's uniquely suited to help others overcome those problems now. If you feel like you get stuck in the weeds on a day-to-day basis, this chat offered me a lot of clarity, and I know hands down it's going to help you too. That's enough for me. Let's get into episode 129 of Marketing by Design. But before we do, I have a resource for you guys. If you look right below, you're going to see the highest converting website's visual swipe file in Notion. Before we design high converting sites for our clients, we always start with inspiration. And so we've gathered an entire swipe file of some of the highest converting website designs on the internet. This is where we start from, and this is what's working well for our clients. If you're considering a redesign or you just want to know what looks good when it comes to redesigning a website, that's a great place to start. I invite you to take me up on that. That'll be in the first link in the description. Without further ado, this is Alex Foulkes of CoLabs HQ by Design.
Yeah. So I joined Vistage 3 years ago almost. And we were talking off camera or off recording about you almost not doing something that you're very glad you did. And this is one of my situations because I got introduced to Vistage via a friend who owns a business, and he just thought that I might be interested, and so he linked me up with his Vistage chair. So you have your chair, which is the person who runs the group, and it's a pretty large organization. So there's Vistage groups all around the world. So they're outside of the nation, and it's a maximum of 16 people in the group with one chair, and then some resources outside of that chair, like really good website and different things like that. And so it's a very high level organization. It's a little expensive. And so when I got introduced, I was very intrigued by it because I always loved the personal growth stuff, but I was also intimidated. And my friend who introduced me for his group, and the Vistage chair said no because I was too small and they were all like 100 million plus. And I got so pissed off because my competitive nature kicks in, and I'm like, how could they say no to me? And I forget exactly how, but I got introduced to another chair. Her name's Julianne. She's my chair. And she connected with me, she was starting a new Vistage group. So she was out looking to talk with other owners and CEOs, and we had connected, and she told me about it, and I was really interested in it. And then I told her no, because I was scared, to be perfectly honest. I knew I would be this sort of the small guy in the group. or I thought I was going to be. Turns out that was true. Um, and I went to the first meeting, which was this was like sort of in COVID still, and so we did the first one online, and I met some of the people, and I was super intimidated. So I told her, I said no. I was like, not for me, and she said, why? She pushed me, and we had a conversation about it. She said, just do it, just try it, just get out of your comfort zone and
Uh-huh.
trust me. And I did. And as soon as I went to the first in-person meeting, I was like, okay, I get it. And
Uh-huh.
so this is a very long-winded answer to your question, which was how was yesterday? But yesterday was my I don't even know. I guess there's 12 meetings in a year. We meet once a month
Uh-huh.
in person, so probably 30th meeting or somewhere around there, maybe even a little
Wow.
more. And it never gets more comfortable. I have the same butterflies going in. I have the same question marks of, I don't know, like should I even, or maybe I'm not the one, right? All of that imposter syndrome. And you get there and you see the people, and you sit down and you start processing on a very intimate level their issues and your issues, but they also pair it up really nicely with really high level speakers. And so you
Uh-huh.
start with just talking about what's been going good, what's been going bad, that sort of mastermind style
Uh-huh.
intro. And then we met the speaker, and the speaker was incredible. And almost all of them are. And it was this guy, Severin Sorensen, and he talks on AI. I know everybody talks on AI these days, but he was incredible, very actionable. And I hear a lot of people talking on AI, and I go, yep, okay, understood, get it.
Uh-huh.
I sat there and I was like, God damn it. Like, fuck, I'm doing this wrong. I'm thinking about this wrong. And that happens so often. Um, and I think it's one of the values I get out of it. There's a few, but one of the values is that it forces me out of my comfort zone. It forces me out of my day to day, and it forces me into a situation that I would not do, but love doing, which is listening to really good experts talk about the thing that they love and they're really good at,
Uh-huh.
and hearing their stories. And I get that. And then you get to hear about the other businesses' struggles or
Uh-huh.
problems or successes. And the thing that I realized is that you look at these people, and these are badass people. Like some of the people in my group are like, you know them, right? Because you read
Uh-huh.
about them.
Yeah.
There's one person who is going through a very public, it's not even an issue. It's this just public sort of thing. And she's in the news, and then you talk with her and you realize her problems are my problems. I can solve her problems. She solved my problems, and we come together, and it's just such a really cool and unique thing to see the inside. And I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't understand that I'm capable. And I
Uh-huh.
think a lot of people lack that in their lives. And so I'm glad that I pushed myself, just like you were very glad that you pushed yourself to do that uncomfortable thing. I'm so
Uh-huh.
glad that I pushed myself to do this, because it shows me that one, I can compete. Two, I'm valuable, even if I'm not $100 million business, or $1 billion business, or not in the public light like they are. Um, that there's value, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not the only one who's not like that. There's other sort of business, and they're just as valuable as the people who you would look at and go, they're incredible. And I'm just as messy as they are, and they're just as messy as me, even if they have a
Yeah.
huge organization, and you think that everything's locked up because on the surface it looks like it. It's that
Yeah.
social media window of, like, you just see the clips, and then when you get in, you realize we're all just human, and we all just screw up, and we all need help. Even if it's the same help that I've given you and you're just giving it back to me, it gets you out of looking at just the tree.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And people say all the time, and it's kind of an aphorism at this point, but that you want to be the smallest person in the room. And then when the rubber hits the road, you realize just how uncomfortable it is. Like all that imposter syndrome creeping in.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, I love to hear that. And when you start to get past the surface level of relationship, I mean, even on LinkedIn, I think a lot of it is surface level just because you aren't getting to those conversations. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. The moment you can go deep with someone to share those intimate struggles, especially other founders, other people that are, you know, 24/7, there's some kind of anxiety there. And that's something that people can, and that's something you really bond over when you start to go deep,
Mm-hmm.
start to understand. those emotions like few others could. And also too, just access to a group like that, that's very, as I build a business, that's very high priority for me, is getting in rooms where I am the smallest person. And that emotion of like the anxiety, like I twice a day, Alex, I experience that emotion of anxiety beforehand of doing something. Like, I don't want to do this, it's going to be hard. That's in the morning and the evening before the gym. Um, and I'm trying to recognize something like that as a bit more of a positive signal, because it's wild how you feel it day after day. You're about to do something uncomfortable, and every single time there's still the desire to not do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. It never goes away. Never will. But I think I think part of it is you have to invest in the committing of doing that, like showing up for other people, saying, okay, especially financially. Like, I know access to highly curated, high performing groups of people are not cheap. And that's because there's so much value in it, like we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
But part of it is you have to commit with either that anxiety that you deal with, you have to commit through your finances, you have to commit in some way. But I love to see that for you. What what are some of the lessons that's taught you that you've brought back to CoLabs? I mean, I know you have a history in the restaurant industry and stuff. We'll definitely get into that. The one thing we're not going to talk about today, is I promised I wouldn't bring up, is your height. So I know we'll squeeze right over that. But
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about some of those lessons and how they're fueling what you're building at CoLabs.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll also start by not answering your question directly, and then I'll answer your question, because another piece of value too, which is not the piece that I went in even searching for, and it's not the piece that comes to mind. I mean, truly, it did not come to mind first for me, but more than 10x'd my investment with them on a monthly basis, because I've connected with people who have money, and guess what? They have problems, and guess what else? I can solve some of them. And so I don't know what the exact multiple is, but because I'm connected with these people, I've sold services to them on an ongoing basis. And so one Vistage member is my biggest client. I never would have had them. And they've led me to other clients. So um, get in the room with people, make yourself uncomfortable, overstretch your means sometimes too, because if you're linking up in relationships, are the most valuable thing. Now to answer your question, some of the value, there's very actionable value, and then there's this sort of ethereal confidence value. A lot of the ethereal sort of confidence value I get is that, like you said, every time you go to the gym, you feel uncomfortable before. I feel that way about Vistage and going there. I also feel that way about going to little chamber events, right? I felt that way. They asked me to be on the board. So I felt that way about being a board member. And now I can go back into my mental catalog, and I can think about the situations that were really scary, that were really intimidating. I hosted, you host once every 16 months. It depends on the member count, right? One of the scariest, most intimidating times was when I had to host. I've hosted twice now for business. It means you welcome them in, you give everything about your business, you show them the numbers, you show them the good, you show them the bad, and then you process what that looks like, right? What are the challenges?
Nice.
And I was thinking in my head before that meeting, I knew I couldn't get out of it, and I was still thinking, how do I get out of this? And then after the meeting is when I scored my biggest client ever, right? And so it's like,
Nice.
not that that's going to happen every time, but I now have one, and many others, but one really significant input output. Input felt scary, knew I had to do it, gut said to do it, right? Because our brains were created hundreds of thousands of years ago, and we go into fight or flight mode. That's what's happening when we're scared to go into these things, right? There's a rustling in the leaves, and is it a bear or is it a bunny? We tense up and we go, I'm either going to go capture the bunny and that's food, or I'm going to run from the bear, right? That's what our brains are doing. But
Yeah.
you need to have that input to output where you can relate the scary time going in, but the good positive thing going out. And so now I just have so many of those where I don't get intimidated by so much other things at this point. There are still things
Yeah.
that intimidate me, but it just sort of notches up and up. And you gain a lot of confidence there. It
Uh-huh.
teaches you just skills, right? Like we process hard issues, complicated issues every time we go. We do 2 to 3 issues. And this is an intense 30 to 40-minute process where we look at what the challenge is, what the possible solutions are, and it's a back and forth, and it gets uncomfortable on both sides, right? It gets very personal. Now, if you want to process an issue with me, I can do that like a lot of people can't because I've just done it so many different times.
Yeah.
There's the other actionable value of we had this guy Sorensen talk to us about how to prompt, right? And a few other sort of the bigger picture AI stuff, right? That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
The actionable prompting stuff is like, I just realized I was not putting enough effort into my prompting, right? And not thinking about it the right way. Now I take that back. I had a management meeting with my team. I shared it with them. He gave us resources because he's a part of this network and he wants to give value and he's a speaker, which is a big deal for people. And so he gave me ton of just really good resources, some paid, some not, which I now take to my team and give to them. So there's a lot of value there. And again, you can trace it all back to those moments where you maybe weren't going to do the thing because you didn't think
Uh-huh.
you could. And
Yeah.
when you do them and your gut tells you, that's where you got to get good at overriding those sort of early emotions around it and realizing. And then once you do them, you realize there's value there.
Yeah, that's so good, man. One thing I didn't want to skip over that you said is closing that feedback loop. I think part of it is just slowing down a little bit sometimes. Like, it's so easy to keep pushing forward, trying to do more, more calls, more emails sent, whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, if you don't take a conscious moment to just like say, okay, this is what I did and this is the outcome that happened, especially with I see in a lot of high performers who don't like to celebrate wins. And I just had this happen yesterday where you have something good happen in your business and you're thinking, okay, just the next thing right away. There's no, there's no conscious acknowledgement of like, okay, I'm growing. And when you don't close that feedback loop, it makes it really hard to just acknowledge it to yourself that you're making progress. And at the end of the day, if you're not giving yourself the rewards of what we're working so hard for, it's a really tough balance to strike of rewarding yourself versus keeping the iron hot and keeping going. And it's something I've seen, especially in I know a lot of high performers, a lot of people that we're talking to experience is sort of striking this balance between complacency, constant progress, and just enjoying it all in the meantime. Not something I don't think we ever 100% figure out, but that's a big part of what this journey is, man. This is life. One thing I did want to touch base on too was sort of your perspective, and we talked about this in our last chat a couple months ago, but you have a big part of your story, which you do a really good job of telling online. People go and follow you, Alex Foulkes, on LinkedIn. You do a very good job of storytelling, and you lean into your past experiences really well to create a personality that people then want to know. Just you you create a very good picture of this is who it is. This is who I am, not hiding anything. I'm here to help. I just want to have a conversation. I think that's a really good filter for your business and everything that you have. Um, I want to know in specific how your story, how your career, your past chapters, and restaurant touring, being a founder, everything like that have fueled what you're doing now. What that transition was like, because it seems from the outside, from the viewing the package, the 6'7" package from the outside, it looks like it's a very stark contrast between the food and bev industry and then what we're doing today at CoLabs. So take me on that journey a little bit. What lessons did you learn back here, and how is that fueling the day to day now?
Yeah, great questions. So I'm going to start again by not answering directly your
I'd
question
expect nothing else, dude.
because
That's
that's
what I
the
love.
theme now. I'm going to hit on you complimented me, and I appreciate it because I've worked really hard on this and I've sort of obsessed over it, which is storytelling. And I think
Uh-huh.
storytelling is a very underrated skill. And so I'll just do a couple shout outs to two people, one I've met in person and one I've never met, but who made a pretty big impact on me. And so the first one is this lady, Nancy Duarte, who is on LinkedIn, but she also is a TED speaker. And she has a TED talk called, I think it's The Secret Structure of Great Storytelling or something like that. There's a lot of clips of, it's like a 20-minute sort of part of her talk, her TED talk. And it's so valuable. And she breaks down the secret structure of what makes a really good speech. So Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, Maya Angelou, a couple others, and they all follow what she calls the spark line, which is painting the future and painting where you currently are, and then painting the future. And if you think of Steve Jobs, and you can literally track it, like, and she did scientifically, she spent years just tracking the data of this, and you can see the crowd ebb and flow with the way that they're telling the story, and each one followed almost exactly this pattern. And so that was a really influential talk for me. The other one was a Vistage speaker who stands out. Her name is Rebecca Heiss. She's from South Carolina, and she is brilliant at storytelling too. And I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. And she did this 4-hour talk with us, and I was sitting there, and everybody else was just sitting there, like, the whole time watching like little children as she read like our favorite story to us with actionable lessons. And I think you can have a message and it can be the best message in the world, and it doesn't go anywhere because you didn't use storytelling. And that's what I see a lot out there. I'm not a marketer, but I've been obsessed with sort of marketing and storytelling for now a few years. And I see a lot of people go marketing, checkbox, boom, let's get it out there. Here's my thought leadership lesson. Nobody fucking cares, right? Because they see it all the time. And it looks like all of the other sort of just basic prompted thought leadership stuff. So I think, my whole point on that is that like storytelling is a skill. It takes work. It takes research. It takes, like you said, slowing down and actually trying to learn the thing as opposed to just prompting now in, this day and age. And now I totally forgot what your question was. So if you can reiterate.
I knew that was gonna happen. No. And I kind of forgot what I asked too. No, I was talking about the restaurant industry and the transition, and I mentioned a little bit about sales in there too. So, talk to me about restauranting, and then how your story, and then how that's connecting to CoLabs.
Yeah. So you want to know if I had a big plan where all of this sort of came together and started in one place and ended exactly where I thought it was? I don't think anybody probably has that story in their life. I certainly did not. I was always a very unstructured, free-flowing ADHD kid who barely made it through college and high school. Like I literally didn't graduate college. I had to go back, and like I struggled. And I never had structure. Now I'm obsessed with structure and probably a little OCD on it, where I eat the same breakfast every day, the same way. I do the same things, my same routine at night. And I honestly, I try to break that as much as I can, or as much as I think I should. But it's for a reason, is because most of my life up until like 25, 26, I never figured out, and I just failed, over and over again. And I fucking hated that feeling. And so I got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to fail again. And the first time that I didn't fail was when I got a job in the restaurant industry, and I was new into it. And I somehow got this job as a catering manager. And as soon as I got in there, I found the things that make me work, which is I've always loved sports. Because I can get into the zone, right? And I can focus in. I couldn't focus at any other time. And the restaurant industry provides this chaotic, heated environment where things are happening all around you. And when I have that with timelines and other pressures, I can perform really well. When I don't have that, I don't. So my first job was in the restaurant industry as a catering manager, and I loved it and I thrived in it. So I once I felt that, I got into it and I went, I'm going to succeed in this. And it
Uh-huh.
gave me a level of motivation that other people didn't have. So from there, I got a job and ended up moving from upstate New York, where I was, to Connecticut, got a job, which is not exactly what I wanted to do. It was a banquet manager, but I wanted to run a restaurant, the whole thing. And it wasn't that, and I didn't love the job, but when I was there, a job opened up for this place, Penny Lane Pub in Connecticut, the town that I lived, for a restaurant manager. And I applied and I got an interview and I sat down and I somehow got the job. I was very unqualified for it. They asked me what a POS system was. I didn't know what a POS system was, but I managed to talk my way through and have enough confidence that they gave me a shot. And
Uh-huh.
I ended up buying that restaurant a little under 2 years later, which is insane. It was a lot of luck involved, but I proved myself. I worked so hard because it was another situation where I was like, I could fail again at this. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. And I'm also not going to let myself not succeed. And so I just
Uh-huh.
put my head down and I tried to learn as much as possible. I learned so much there. One of the big lessons was that I didn't know as much as most of the people working there, but I would have these moments where I was up in the office alone and I started to learn what questions they would ask. Like we would put these daily specials out. And I knew that if there was a weird sort of Italian pasta term or something like that, where I knew that they would probably ask me
Uh-huh.
early on, they asked me and I was like, I don't know. Let me go look it up. No trust. Then I
Uh-huh.
learned to look it up beforehand so that if they asked me, then I would look very confident and knowledgeable. And so when I started to do that, they just started to get that I had this appearance of knowledge and expertise. And that's fake it till you make it, right? But
Uh-huh.
I don't think
Yeah.
people talk about how you do that. And that for me was how I did that. I just tried to engineer beforehand the questions that they might ask. And if they didn't ask, fine. If they did, then I looked like, the hero.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to buy the restaurant. Super long story short, that put me into a
How
place.
how old were you? How old were you when you bought the restaurant?
I was just 30, so I started the process when I was like
Wow.
29, and I had barely been a restaurant owner at that point. But I had proven to myself that I could learn things, and so I was confident, and I knew it was a good business. It was busy, and there were opportunities. And
Uh-huh.
by the way, I had no money. I
Uh-huh.
had between myself and my partner, who is this Ecuadorian immigrant who literally walked his ass in from Ecuador, learned English, worked his way up to head chef. Me and him ended up buying this $600,000 restaurant where we together had $10,000 to put down.
Wow.
So anything's possible. There
Dude.
was a whole lot there of
Yeah,
how
you're
we did it.
putting that charm to use. I see. Yeah.
Well, I went out and I raised money, and I didn't come from money. People
Uh-huh.
think I do now, but I didn't come from it. My parents were social workers, but we had friends and family members and people that I just had some relationship with that I could ask. And I remember the first person I asked gave me $50,000, and I was like, "What the
Wow.
heck?" And he's my wife's good friend's dad, and he's an amazing guy. And he just said, I remember he asked me, he said, how much are you putting in? And I told him, I was like, not much. And he's like, I need you to have more skin in the game. I said, I can't, but I'll tell you what I do have. I'm all in. And he said, okay, good enough for me. And he sent a check. And I had written a business plan and showed, but like, business plans are bullshit for the most part. It's like what you're going to do. Um, Pro
Yeah.
forma and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm going to make, $1 million in, the next year. It's great. You say it.
Uh-huh.
But then I still had to raise a whole lot of money. And I remember I worked so hard for $10,000 from somebody else where they were like, well, you got to create a better business plan and you got to show me financials. And I had to just and then somebody else gave me another 25 grand where they asked no questions. And it's like, I
Uh-huh.
just pieced together enough money to put it together. And some people were really easy and trusting. And some people, I totally get it, wanted the world and wanted to make sure that their investment was safe. But I managed
Yeah.
to convince enough people, and we ended up buying it with a bank loan that needed a pretty hefty down payment.
Talk to me about that pressure. Did you feel any pressure like from on yourself to make this work after something like that happened? I can't imagine. Just and I feel pressure to on a much smaller level, like to my parents and my family, the people that have invested time into me. Like that's a big thing that fuels me every day. But how did you feel like you had a weight on your shoulders when you had some of these people to live up to that were they're literally invested in you and they said like, man, we don't know everything about this, but this I believe in you, this dollar amount, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah. So one, it was the most stressful time in my life when I was raising the money. I remember there were times where I thought I wouldn't do it, and I just sort of balled up and cried like legitimately.
Mhm.
And there were times where I felt a little more confident, but it's a process like anything else where you don't haven't done it before, and is incredibly difficult. After we got it over the finish line, yeah, I felt an incredible weight to succeed, not only to the people that I raised money from that I knew certainly they were pretty much the highest, but also even just the bank, because only one bank said yes. The
Mm.
rest said no because it was a restaurant. We had never been business owners before. It was a risky investment to banks. Banks don't like taking, on risk.
Right.
But the one said yes. And I just, all of that money, I felt like it was an obligation. And yeah, it didn't feel like there were some blessings, but it felt more like a burden, to be honest, in a lot of ways. But we ended up paying it off, and we paid it off. In COVID, which was about the hardest time for restaurants.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
um, man, that feeling was good to write some big checks to people. One of the first one was Frank, who gave me the $50,000 just based on trust. And when I paid him back with interest, zero buyer's remorse. So
Hmm.
happy, to like just
Mm.
give this guy back. And that's what I try to do for other young people who want to be in business. I think about those moments, and so if I'm ever asked to help in any way, mentorship, whatever it is, I think that's one of the reasons why I almost always don't even hesitate, and I don't even think about time or commitment. I just do it because there were people who gave me opportunities, and if I hadn't had those, I mean, that set my whole life up. So it was another moment of you can trace back the steps, that butterfly effect of if this thing doesn't happen, this thing doesn't happen, this thing doesn't happen. I'm not here in CoLabs, which again was your original question. How do you,
Hmm.
how do you get there? But I felt like a business owner, and those things never happen if I don't first
Hmm.
get that opportunity, and then all of the other stuff in between.
Hmm.
So why am I in a completely different business now is because my partner and I, who was a young kid, he started working for me as a busser, worked his way up to GM, and then became a partner in another restaurant we bought, and sort of proved himself out, came to me with this idea where he said, basically, what we do in the restaurant world and what you're doing, I'd been consulting at the time with a few other restaurants, is good. But what if we take the things that we do really well in restaurants and we take them to where we think there's a lot of problems, which is the blue collar space? We know a ton of electricians because we own a couple buildings, plumbers, HVAC, and they all do the same stuff. They don't call you back. They don't show up on time. They don't invoice you. There's problems. And so myself and him, Hayden, tested our theory with client number one, and we pitched him with nothing, just an idea, some credibility at that point, but no website, no logo, no LLC. We just said, hey, Ben was our first client. We said, I think we can help you with your customer service and take a lot off your plate. And he said, that sounds amazing. And we got to work. And that's what became CoLabs. By client four, who I was just having a meeting with, one of those clients actually, who's
Hmm.
unbelievable story. He just built his business up. He called me after the meeting. And he said, I want you guys to know, to me and Hayden, that I just wrote the biggest invoice I've ever written for $1.8 million. And that check's going to come in 30 days for $1.8 million. This dude, when we started with him, was doing around $1.8 million a year. And now he's doing like 8 million. But we tested out our theory, and it worked. And I got to the point where I was like, I have to choose. Am I going to
Yeah.
be in restaurants, or am I going to do this thing that is working but is still new and we're not sure about? I've always been able to take on risks. I mean, I think part of that story shows that for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And so this was another risk, but I felt comfortable because we had proven it out, and now I'm very confident in my ability to learn things and overcome obstacles. I think I'm really good at problem solving, and business and life is problems. And if you can solve them, you grow and you learn the playbook from there. So
Yeah.
that was the sort
Dude.
of impetus for it and made the leap.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. And I think even as like I've heard a lot of people tell their stories on this show. Like we have, 110 episodes at this point. But the hearing someone else tell their stories is always feels like it's more put together than when you tell your own. So, like for example, you say there's these two chapters. To me, it's not as big of a transition because you're always kind of building this asset that is yourself. I mean, you do a really good job of talking about the points and the past jobs, the past role, the past scopes of work that then inform the decisions in the present. And without those, people give credit and they feel like, oh, if I would have started way earlier doing this thing, I'd be so much further ahead now. I don't always think that's the case because without those things, you can't just level skip over the skills you built in the meantime. And I feel this emotion a lot too. Like and you talked about the social media thing where you see people online, especially solo consultant led businesses who are using social, who have personalities online that are just, you see like every day, like a 19-year-old, you know, making 20, 30K MRR with AI and stuff like that. And um, I realize now, and I'm starting to see it more in myself, that it's not worth it to envy over something like that because you never know. First of all, you don't know the whole context of the story. You don't know what it took them to get there, and you don't even know what their life looks like. Um, and I think back to like some of my past endeavors is, dude, I started playing golf in college, like, and I spent 8 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day on a golf course. And there are times when I think, man, like that is such a waste of time. Like if I had been learning software, if I had been learning how to code way earlier, if I had just been building my skills, building my network back then, I would be so much further ahead. And you don't realize in the moment that the the skills that you're building is something that seems totally different. You always take away, no matter what, no matter how contrasted it might sound or might feel. Um, I think the biggest thing I've learned since we've kind of been in touch and I see you is you solve a lot of clarity problems. I think that's you kind of a big value prop of what your business is, about what your brand is that you're able to kind of see through, okay, this is the mess that can be business. And this is the one key thing that maybe we can change or optimize in order to kind of help it run smoother, make it more aligned to what it should be. Where do you think that something, A, tell me if I'm off base with that, but B, where does that skill that you have now in CoLabs of like being able to look at a business and say, this is how I can help, this is where I can add value? Because I think at the end of the day, no matter what industry you're in, you're really looking to add value to your clients' businesses. It can look any different way. Ideally, you're doing it through something that you're skilled at and that you enjoy doing and it fulfills the life bucket. Um, but tell me about your ability to like, okay, this is the problem, and this is how we go in and fix it. Do you have a process between maybe identifying that and what are some of the reps that have gone into that for you?
Yeah, great question. And because it's so good, I'm actually just going to answer the question this time. Um,
Man, only took us 30 minutes.
it's
Man.
yeah,
It's like,
and somehow only two questions asked, I think. Um, so
this is, by
yeah,
the way,
I
this is
think
like, this is the way the best conversations have. It's like long form. So it's
yeah.
definitely a good sign. I'll just say that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I love doing these things. I don't do them enough. So they're always really fun because you end up, and when there's good questions, I think that's key, not being a podcast host, but I think that's
Uh,
key. You got to ask the right questions, and that gets you into the right mode to be able to answer and think back. And so when you were asking that, I was thinking about, because I don't think about these things all the time, is why? And I think there's a lot that goes into it. And having a skill seems really simple when you have it, and it seems so hard to grasp and reach when you don't have it.
Uh-huh.
But I think for me, where it started, actually, I told you about how I was good at sports. The other thing that I've been good at is strategy and games. And I have a very sort of obsessive personality, and I can get very obsessed with things for a long
Uh-huh.
time. And the rest, I just don't, and I really struggle through them. Another thing that I got obsessed with, and I blame this on my older brother, is online poker. And so after college, I became an online poker player, and through college as well, I made some income. And he one day when I was a kid, he came back with a brand new Mazda RX-8, and it was this first time I'd seen like this really nice car. It's not like the nicest car in the world, but like he was 18 or maybe 19, and he comes back with this brand new car, and we were like, how the fuck did you get this? And he's like, I've been playing poker. He dropped out of college. He was playing poker, and he ended up moving to Vegas, and my eyes widened, and I got into that in basically going into college, and just played. And then after college, I played professionally for a few years. And to be good at poker, it's a gambling game. It's a lot like business.
Uh-huh.
But there's luck involved, but you can overcome that luck in the long term if you focus in on the minutia, the little details. And so
Uh-huh.
that was the first time that I learned how to focus in on the tiny little movements that you compound together to make a good decision. And once you have sometimes you have tools to help you with that. But a lot of times it's just strategy. And I just got obsessed, and I read every book I could and learned how to make those little decisions in the moment better, to give myself the best chance to have as much good fortune as possible. And that's how you win.
Uh-huh.
And I've taken a lot of lessons with that through business. And then through business, I've learned using that strategy, which is, let's break it down. Let's see, if I'm playing against Andy and he has a stack of poker chips and I want to win his poker chips, how do I exploit him? Right. And it comes down to, again, those little actions in making a decision in business. It's the same thing. You got to break it down to why it's maybe the most important or not the most important thing. And so I've developed that skill, and I think there's a lot of things. It's Vistage, like we talked about, issue processing, and just doing those reps of thinking through situations. And I touched on another story of a client who's crushing it. And he has an electrical contracting business. And for about 17 or 18 years, he grew it to under $2 million a year. He had grown maybe like 100,000 every year. We started working with him, and we were basically just coaching him. And then we eventually plugged in some staff to help him run his business. But really, he was our first coaching client. And we just got him out of the business, because when you're in the shit of it, in the weeds, it
Uh-huh.
feels really good, actually, because you're doing a lot of the things that you're used to, you're comfortable with. It's how
Yeah.
you have to build a business. To start
Uh-huh.
a business, you have to wear all the hats, and you have to get in, you have to do sales and marketing. You got to clean the bathrooms, and you got to wash the tables, and you got to serve the food, and do all of that.
Uh-huh.
If you want to grow it past a certain point, and that depends on the industry, but that ceiling hits pretty quickly, you have to step back and step out of the business. And
Uh-huh.
so all we did with him was started to question why he was doing certain things. And so he was answering the phones, he was going on jobs, and we said, why? You have a almost $2 million business at this point. His opportunity was that he had some big jobs that he could bid and possibly win, but he'd never had time to bid them. So he had an office staff. Let them do all of the stuff, even if it's not perfect, and bid. And so he started bidding his jobs. And then once he started to get those jobs, money started to roll in. And then once he had too much work on that, he got somebody to come in and bid it. They did a really good job. They started bidding more jobs, and he just started to notch up because he focused on the things that actually mattered, which were, one, for him, relationships, because you can bid jobs, but you can
Uh-huh.
also just connect with general contractors and building developers. And he did that, and he connected with a few of them who had a really good rapport built with him, and then referenced him to other people. And he just started getting these big jobs via the things that don't feel like work, which is taking somebody out to lunch and building a relationship with them. And so our job as the sort of coach for him was really to isolate what he was doing that he shouldn't do and what he should be doing, and then just hit him week after week on, well, why did you do that? We said we were going to do this. And he eventually got better at it. And again, he's going to do $7 or $8 million this year. He just wrote a check or an invoice for $1.8 million. This is in the span of a little over 2 years. That's the opportunity in business. Most people never get out of the weeds, and they keep doing the same actions over and over again because it feels good. His one of the few qualities, you don't need a lot of them. I love this guy. One of the few things that he's really good at is he's really good at making himself uncomfortable. I think that's what I'm really good at too. And when you have somebody who can accept that challenge and then challenge you back, and you're willing to take that on, he put himself in uncomfortable positions that other people wouldn't have done, and he did them. And some of them worked. Not all of them, probably actually a pretty low percentage of them worked. But the ones that did landed really big opportunities, and those compound on themselves.
Dude, so much of what you just said, man. Like, how the biggest thing I've learned since, founding the business 2 years ago is how risk averse you actually are, and just how uncapped the outcomes can be for getting over that feeling. And you see that example, like sometimes it just takes someone reminding you of what feels like unproductive in the moment to do those things, like go to lunch, to spend time on, like literally, Alex, this is why it's so hard especially when you're getting started, you don't know where the ROI lies. You don't know where the puck's going. You don't know where the revenue comes from. And when you take a step back, kind of like we talked about in the beginning, is having those quiet moments saying, how did actions lead to outcomes? And a lot of the times in this obscure stuff that it doesn't make logical sense, right? It was commenting on that one person's LinkedIn post. It was getting back to that person, within a reasonable time span and connecting with them on a deep level. That's stuff that you almost have to hear from someone else, that like, that's where the ROI is. You need to do more of that. And then as you get better, as you see the case studies start to pile up, as it becomes a little bit undeniable. But so much of it comes from, I know it feels so good, especially when you are wearing all the hats in the beginning. It feels so good to be busy because it feels like you're successful. And it's almost like this mental masturbation game that you play with yourself. And that is so hard to get out of by yourself. You have to hear it from someone else. You have to get help. You have to be the smallest one in the room and hear it from someone else. So I spot on agree with that. When you talk about getting a little bit more tactical here, when you talk about implementation of, like, because a lot of what we talked about is a little bit philosophical in terms of, okay, clarity, this is where your time needs to be spent. If we get tactical and think, what does it look like to achieve this clarity? Are there any like tools or software or anything that you help people plug into to say, like, okay, I'm showing you this. This is how we create organizations. This is how we create structure. Do you have anything that like a roadmap or process or any tools or anything like that make it a bit more tangible for maybe some of the listeners?
Yeah. So one thing we do is we get together with all of our clients and do a deep dive day where we look at their business and we look at all of the sort of different things they're doing in it and the opportunities. And we try to trace it back. Sometimes we do that in person if they're local. If not, we'll do it online. And when we're in person, we'll get one of those sort of big, sticky note boards and just start writing things and pulling them off and putting them on the wall. And that's how we start, where let's say they're a blue collar client. Then we'll look at, all right, how many jobs did you do in the year? Let's find that out. You have a CRM. Let's pull the numbers. How many jobs were in which month did you do the most jobs? Okay, is that the trend? Did you do that year over year? If they don't have that data, that's where we have to start. And sometimes you have to take guesses at it. But it's about breaking it down to its smallest part as much as possible. And so if you have $2 million in revenue, okay, great. What quarter did that come from? What month did that come from, in the largest part? And if this is the smallest quarter, what's the smallest month? Why, right? There's a lot of opportunities in there. Where you can isolate them and go, here's a trend. It's always like this, or it was only like this at one point, right? I learned to do that in the restaurant, where when I first bought it, I got obsessed with the daily report where I would see the numbers, and we were a busy place. And so we could do $10,000 on a day. But within those $10,000, I could print the report and I could see down to which beers sold, which burgers sold, which steaks sold, what staff sold the most. Why? This person's selling the most every single time they work. Is it the times they work, or is it the person, right? And it can be either. Who's making the most tips? Once you start to break it down, you look at the data and you can piece together the reasons why. So it's the same for a restaurant. It's the same for you, right? Another thing we'll do for a business like yours is, all right, maybe you have 10 customers in the year. Let's look at those customers and let's look at, which ones paid you, which ones were the easiest, which ones were the hardest. Let's write down why, and let's create a rating system for what your clients look like. And from there, you can target which clients you want. And there's a lot of really good ahas in there where you put together groups of clients and go, well, I have 3 clients that I like the best. They also paid me the most and they were the easiest. Why? Well, they're bigger, so they have money. 2, they had a really urgent problem that I came in and solved. And 3, they live near me. Okay, interesting. Is there something there? Yeah, I've created a relationship with them. I see them once a week or once a month. These other ones I don't. So, all right, how with the other clients do we create a stronger relationship where we see them once a month? Maybe you just have a check-in call, right? Something like this where you get online with them and build more of a rapport. So, I don't know if that answers your question. I think it's a little more tactical. It depends on the business, but it starts with just literally kind of brain dumping. And the beautiful thing about the AI world we live in is you can take all of that information once you have it literally down, and you can just ask AI to help you piece through it. Be a top 5 consulting firm, take on that personality, and let's create a really good sort of business plan of do a SWOT analysis. And now we can do so much easier and so much better quality break down this sort of information if you can find the data. And so that's where it starts.
Yeah, dude, that's such a good habit of referencing objective information, especially with all this head trash that we talk about of, being a founder, being too close to our own business. You can never go wrong looking at objectivity and hearing what you need to hear from either spreadsheet objective data or someone else who's gone through it before you. So huge value in what you're saying, man. I think this is a good place to land the plane, but I think we've given people a really good picture of what it looks like to get help, what it looks like to sort out, these problems that scaling brings, and finding the one key thing that they can do to solve their problems and take action on it. Tell me, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming on. Like, I see nothing but up and to the right for you and everything that you've got going on. I learn from you every single day while I'm on the treadmill scrolling through the phone. And the depth of connection that you're able to build kind of through your content, I think is a really big advantage and differentiator that people are going to experience when, they get in touch with you. They click on this episode, they go listen on LinkedIn. And like I said, man, I can't thank you enough for your time and everything you've taught me just in the couple interactions that we've had together. So highly encourage the listeners to head over to your LinkedIn profile, the website. Anything else? Where should they go next?
Say that last part again?
Well, where should people go next, the listeners?
Oh, for like connecting with me?
Yeah.
Well, I probably shouldn't even say this, but I started a really uncomfortable thing. I have a TikTok now, and I've been like doing like yapping videos on there. So, um, but don't give me some time on that. But so on there, and then yeah, really LinkedIn is where I've been and where you can connect with me. And like you said, I love to share. I think we connected because we have a very sort of similar outlook on it, and you share the stories. And I love the small percentage of people that rise through all of the noise on there, and you're one of them. And
That's a good way to put
so
it.
connect, and you know, if we do, I'll probably push you to share your story a little bit more, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and I love to see that, because uncomfortable situations means you're growing. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I love these conversations because you weed through a lot of the stuff that you're sort of thinking. I think there's a lot of lies we tell ourselves too. And if you don't just start talking about them, you never realize what those are. So I appreciate you for your questions and coming at it the way that you have.
100%, man. We'll do it again sometime.